Ready? Okay. Good evening. Do we have a volunteer to lead us in prayer, followed by the pledge? Volunteer. Okay. Mr. Stalling.
Lord, we love you and thank you, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity together as a school district support, Lord. To act on behalf of our students, Lord, we pray for your divine intervention and your wisdom and direction. I pray for your anointing power on this board, Lord, that you bless it with the ability to make decisions, Lord, that's what's best for our school district. Lord, in all your things that we do, Lord, we give you praise and glory. And we pray today. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Monday, November the 18th, 2019 school board meeting. Today we will begin our meeting by hearing a presentation from Ms. Dixon.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me this time to share with you about what's going on at Central. Ms. Joseph asked me to kind of update you, kind of where we are at this point of the year. First of all, I want to start out with sharing some exciting things, good things that are going on at Central. Our first slide, and I apologize, I did not make y'all copies of this, but I'll be glad to email this to you. We've had some great success this year with our parent night so far, celebrating the students who scored 3s, 4s, and 5s on their FSAs. It's been the largest turnout parent events that we've had since I've been at Central, so that's been an awesome way to celebrate our students. One thing that's exciting to me at Central is that we are building team spirit. And you can see this is the first grade team and how they came together to celebrate or observe Halloween in first grade. In the first year I was there, we weren't seeing those types of things, but it's really looking, it's exciting to see how the teachers and staff are coming together. Also, we have our Pride celebrations that we have at the last Friday of each month when we celebrate the students that have had good behavior. This year for elementary, we had a little fall carnival where they rotated between games, and it really went well. The students really enjoyed it. And then also just wanted to make y'all aware, I'm not sure if you know, Miss Blue, one of our first grade teachers, has gone out and gotten sponsors in the community where each month, each student receives a book. So at the end of school year, they should have 10 books for their home library. And here is their most recent book, and they're, of course, showing it off and thanking the sponsor for that month's book. So a lot of exciting things going on at Central. Wanted to also just to make you aware of class size and our attendance, where we are at this point in the year. First of all, kindergarten right now, our class size is 29. We are looking to hire. We have interviewed for that position. And when we have that new teacher, the class average would be 22. Anything I've highlighted in yellow is over the state limit. But I know the county does a county average, but I just wanted to make you aware of what our numbers were. In first grade, we're sitting at approximately 18 students in a class. Second grade, about 21 students in a class. Third grade, we're at about 22 students. Fourth grade, we're at about 20 students. Fifth grade, we are very heavy. We're sitting at about an average of 27 students in each of our 3 classes. And then in sixth grade, where the average should be 22, we're sitting at 25. In seventh grade, we're sitting at about 24. And then in eighth grade, we're at approximately 20 students per class. Looking at our average attendance, Elementary's doing pretty good. We're sitting right there at about 98 point something. And then I looked at how middle school was doing and was a little concerned about that, where it takes kind of a drastic drop. Sixth grade goes down to about 95%. Seventh grade is at about 94%, and eighth grade is at 95%. Some of that can be due to discipline concerns that I'll be sharing with you in just a minute that may be impacting that average daily attendance. But our total enrollment right now is 1072. When I pulled it up on Skyward a couple days ago, my understanding we have a couple more coming in tomorrow to register. So we are getting new students. You know, they seem to be trickling in. Right now, I think we're about 10 over what we were last year. My concern that I just want to share with you is our discipline comparison. And you know, the year before I came, there were approximately 2,000 discipline referrals. We got that down to, I believe, approximately 800 last year. But we are not on a good trend right now. You can see it's done for August, September, and October. And you can see the differences, and I'm going to tell you, I should have had a copy of this in front of me because I'm blind, I'm getting old. But in August last year, we had 17 referrals. In August this year, we had 53. September of last year, we had 76 referrals, and this year we had 159. And then in October of last year, we had 88. And this year we had a total of 222 referrals during the month. So just looking at where we are right now, up to October of last year, we were at 100, is that 181 or 61? 81. And this year, we're already at 434 referrals. That is a big difference.
Mrs.
Okay.
Dixon, may I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What are the majority of the referrals for? What's going on?
I'm going to show you some more
Okay.
data here in a
Okay.
minute, and then I'll do my best to answer your
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Okay. Also included in that referral is the bridge, and I took on the responsibility as administrators. You know, we divide up who's going to do what discipline and referrals, and so I took on the bridge this year. Currently, we have 16 students so far this year in the bridge. We've had 40 referrals. 13 have been for defiance of authority. 1 is inappropriate language. 8 for aggressive behavior. 4 fights. 4 disorderly conduct. 4 disobeying or disrespecting. 3 for disruptive behavior. 2 for bus violations. And then 1 that already had a referral coming in based on concerns about a weapon. So that's where we are in the bridge. I will tell you and be honest with you, that has taken a great deal of my time. It has taken away my time for being in classrooms. My classroom visits have become much less than they were last year. So we have to ask ourselves, with those numbers, what is different this year at Central? Well, our instructional staff allocation went from 84 to 71 because of budget concerns, which we all understand. We lost positions, including 1 administrator and 1 guidance counselor. This next piece, I think, is the big piece. The allocated guidance counselor position that we were given is still vacant. So our students have nowhere to go and vent, no one to talk to. And that's always, you know, the buffer between them losing it and having discipline referrals. And we haven't, everyone's doing, I know Ms. Kaufman's sitting back here and she's our curriculum specialist, but I've seen her counseling students. We've all tried to take on that role. But it's very difficult when you're the disciplinarian to also serve as a counselor. Our middle school dean of students was placed at the high school because there was a need there as teacher on special assignment, and we received a temporary dean in Mr. Bayou. Our MTSS SIT coordinator resigned last year, so we have a new person in that position. So that person is just learning our students and trying to deal with the caseload that we have. And we have 24 teachers on our staff that need 2 observations this year by an administrator. And the administrators are having difficulty getting into classrooms because of the increased referrals. So we're mandated, by law, by policy, to observe those teachers at least twice. So that is difficult for us. What else is different this year? We have 11 new teachers and 4 additional teachers on coaching plans. So we have 11 new teachers, and at this point, and I can tell you the number of coaching plans, it will be increasing. After this first round of observations. Our instructional coach is off campus 1 day a week. Our staffing specialist serves multiple schools compared to the staffing specialist last year just serving our school. The bridge is located on our campus. One thing we've had to do, because we don't have a counselor, I have had to take on the role of overseeing the 504s for middle school students. So I'm having to hold those conferences and update those 504s. The elementary 504s have been added to the MTSS person on top of her caseload for having SIT meetings. Those are normally things that guidance counselors would supervise. And then our enrollment is up by 10 from last year, while our staff allocation is down by 13 instructional staff. So those are kind of things that are different. So what are we doing? We know there's issues there. So what have we talked about as staff, and what are some things that we're going to be implementing to help address some of these needs? Ms. Joseph has been gracious. It was like Christmas early when she came to visit me. We are receiving a teacher on special assignment that's coming from the high school, will serve as a temporary dean of students until the Christmas break ending December 20th. Because the goal is to hire a guidance counselor beginning of January. Okay, so, but we do have some help coming in that teacher on special assignment. Then the current dean of students, Mr. Vayu, will serve as the guidance counselor, but will continue to fill in as dean of students if needed. But his main role is going to be serving as a guidance counselor. During the first period, during the first period on the second and fourth Friday of each month, beginning in December, we are going to kind of expand the LEAP lessons that are already being put in place by our ESE department. Each classroom teacher will teach a lesson from the LEAP's curriculum that we give to them with a focus on respect and making good choices. Also, we are have a partnership with the health department with Merv Mateer. He has graciously offered up some of his funding where he can bring in a speaker for assemblies that's going to focus on respect and making good decisions. And one thing we talked about today at our administrative meeting, we're going to implement restorative practices by all administrators and Mr. Vayu, counseling students upon return from suspensions, guiding them through the restorative practice. That will begin, we're going to begin that after Thanksgiving, and what that will look like is if a student is suspended, they will have to come back and follow up with the administrator who they dealt with. Say, for example, it was on a fight. Well, we would try to walk them through the restorative practice. We might bring in the person they got a fight with, have them verbalize how they can make better decisions. And I'm going to tell you, we've had some training on restorative practice. We haven't had a lot, so we'll be looking for some additional training for our staff too, to help guide us in this process. One thing, having said all this, I would just like for you as a board to consider. You've seen our discipline referrals as it was, compared to last year. And the issues that we are having, because it is impacting the learning at our school. So one thing I would like for you just to think about in the future is consider basing allotments and resources on sliding allocation scales to determined by the need and student enrollment. that one scale may not be appropriate for all schools. And the quote I just put in there for us to be reflective on is many people think that equity in education means everyone gets the same thing, but actually means that everyone gets access to what they need. That's kind of a brief summary of what's going on at Central. What questions do you have that I might be able to answer?
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it alarms me a little bit. You said, I think I counted 8 first grade teachers up there with an average student enrollment of 17, which means some of them have less than 17.
They have an average enrollment of 18.
Okay, 18? So some of them have less than 18.
They're all sitting at about right there,
Okay.
7 and 18.
All right, and then, of course, then you mentioned in kindergarten, there's 29 students.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's too many students for
Way
kindergarten.
too many.
But now 18 is low for first grade.
18 is where they're supposed to be.
Okay.
The state says
So
they're supposed
they all
to be
have
at
18 in first grade then?
Yes, ma'am. You know, some classes in other schools, not us, may have 13 or 14 sitting in class. We do not have that. We are either right at the limit.
And- Okay,
Or
and
substantially
what type of support are the kindergarten teachers getting?
Okay, because we only have 3 teachers. 2
Right.
of those are ESE teachers. I have put an additional para in there, so everyone has 2 people in each class.
Okay,
During these large numbers, because I mean, the teachers have been giving, I compliment them, they've been going way above board, their patience is, has been outstanding. And I have done what I could to support them with the personnel that I have.
okay, that's good. And as far as discipline, I know some teachers are strong in the disciplinary, and others need help with it. And are they getting the support that they need as far as, you know, different methods of disciplining and controlling the class and all that? I mean, in other words, are the teachers, especially a new young teacher?
Right. Well, one of the things that we do, what we're doing through our grant money, through the TSSA grant, we're doing Tuesday tune-ups. And we do offer sessions during those times on, we did last year also on behavior management. And then we have PLCs each week, so concerns like that, what's a referral, what's not a referral. I mean, we've worked through those type of things.
And I am by no means judging the teachers because it's a tough job. I realize that. And some of the students are coming from homes where maybe discipline, there's no discipline, whatever. But that was some of my concerns right there.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Any other questions?
I have a question concerning, you may mention that there hasn't been a guidance counselor. Was one ever hired or
No, we've not been able to fill that position.
has it been constantly advertised?
It's been on, yeah, yes, sir.
We've emailed local universities around from Flagler all the way up to Thomas College. She referenced a person that we had one reach out to us from Valdosta State, and we're looking at bringing her on board in January. Technically, she won't graduate until May 20th, but she'll be able to get a teacher certification and work as a teacher, but she'll be out of field. But in May, if we're able to hire her, she will be a fully certified guidance counselor with a master's degree in school counseling.
And we did the same thing last year. One of our guidance counselors was still a student at Valdosta State, and then
what we do with
graduated.
that, in her case, since she will have a statement of eligibility or temporary, we'll be able to pay her as a teacher.
I just want to tell you, I agree with your last statement. It's very true. We need to give the schools what they need and look at what they need. And we need to make sure our students are taken care of, all of them, at all the different schools. But if you need more at your school, I think we need to try to provide.
Well, obviously, we would all agree that if a child is out of the classroom because of discipline, they're not learning.
Right,
So that is directly impacting our learning this year.
I agree.
Any other questions? And I will email that to y'all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
y'all
you very much, Ms. Dixon. All right, at this time, I will move on to the amendments to the agenda. And just for the record, item 4.3, interlocal agreement, will be pulled from the consent agenda items until further notice. Item 4.3, interlocal agreement. Will there be any public comment? None. Okay. We'll move on to item 4, consent agenda items. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Properly moved by Ms. Gibson, seconded by Ms. Bell. Will there be a need for discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 4-0. Item 5, items for individual consideration. Item 5.1, student field trips out of county. Ms. Joseph.
Okay, Mr. Chairperson, I'm presenting 2 field trips to you. Both are from Madison County High School for the CTE program. Mr. Radel is taking one class to VSU, and he is a CTE teacher, and Ms. Dyke, the nursing teacher, is taking a group to Tallahassee. I ask for approval of those 2 trips.
I make the motion to approve the 2 field trips.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Alford, seconded by Ms. Bell. Do we need any time for discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0. Item 5.2, staffing table.
We have no changes to the staffing table at this time.
Okay. 5.3, personnel changes.
Mr. Stallnaker will go over the personnel changes.
Mr. Chairman, on personnel changes, we have one administrative employee recommendation. One employee administrative recommendation, and that's Ms. Robin Hill, recommending her for the Director of Curriculum. And then we have an instructional recommendation pending background check. This is Stephanie Christian. She will be backfilling that additional teacher that Ms. Dixon referenced for kindergarten. We have a non-instructional recommendation, Michelle Rasmussen, which is a bus driver. We had to correct the date on her start date to October 25th. We have one employee, actually 2 employees recommended for termination. One of them is a teacher at the Central School, Barbara Vinson. Right now, she's on leave with pay until the board acts. We have actually a custodian, Brandy Burnett. She was part-time custodian, part-time food service. She has resigned. Dante Braymiller, a custodian at the Central School, recommending termination for him for failure to report to work and constantly. And then Anjanette Akins is a teacher at the high school. She is resigning. She is getting married and relocating. And we have 2 requesting leave of absence, which are Stacy Lee and Samantha Turner. Both of those are for maternity leave. And then we have 2 substitute recommendations at the bottom. Those are the actual personnel changes. You also have in your copy, you have the recommendation sheet for Ms. Hill. There are, as I move forward, 2, 4, 6, 7, I believe, unless I missed somebody, 7 approved volunteers for the district. And if you recall back to one of our previous board meetings, we talked about hiring intervention specialists for the Central School, paying them on contract and agreement. Right now we have 2. We have Ms. Gwen Hubbard, which is scheduled to start tomorrow, and Ms. Cynthia Ellington, which is scheduled to start January 6th, pending background check and drug screening. And those are the personnel changes for tonight.
Okay. Thank you. After hearing from Mr. Stallnaker, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the personnel changes.
Second.
All right. Properly moved by Ms. Gibson, seconded by Ms. Bell. Do we need any time for discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0. Item 5.4, administrative salary schedule. Ms. Joseph.
Okay, Mr. Chairperson, what I present to you is, I reworked the administrative salary schedule. Basically, I've got the different, positions in each category is listed. And what I've done, basically your starting salary and your ending salary is basically the same, but I made the increments even, so basically a person would possibly be getting the same amount of raise each year, rather than 1 year you get $1,000, next year you get 50, and next year you get 10, and 1 year you get 3,000. But basically, the raises, your levels of increase is basically the same. And one thing that we were cited in our audit about is that we need a performance pay scale for our school administrators. And in the little blue box on your bottom left, that's this our performance pay scale for our school administrators. And that's listed. If you are highly effective, you have to get $1 more than the highest raise in that category. And if you were effective, you get between 50 and 75% of that particular step. And so that's in there. And this only has to deal with school administrators, not district administrators. And so if you're a school administrator and you get something other than effective or highly effective, you do not get a raise. And that's state statute. That's not a Madison County thing. And that's something that we were cited on our audit, which we needed to correct.
I just have a question, Ms. Joseph.
Yes, sir.
Will or can the performance pay scale be integrated in the existing salary schedule?
Mr. Daniels, on the existing salary schedule, I think one place you had about a $5,000, a $3,000 or $5,000 raise, and the performance pay says if the person becomes effective, their pay has to be more than that. And so I made the increments equitable, so you wouldn't have to go through and find out which was the highest.
Okay.
Now, this is only for administrators, it doesn't apply to your other people, but we were having to deal with the situation like on one step, you got about a $3,000 or $5,000 step.
Right.
So how long had that been going on?
I can't answer that one.
My biggest thing is the folks that's going to be impacted on this list have a serious problem with it, and they're saying that they're going to be losing out pretty much. It's not going to balance out for them, and that's my issue. I want to kind of be moving them in the right direction or upward as opposed to them losing out. I just don't want our administrators losing out or coming up short, so to speak. We just saw the presentation by Ms. Dixon, and we know what administrators are up against and how hard they're trying to make way and everything. So I personally just want to make sure that none of our administrators are losing out.
Okay, Mr. Chairperson, with this thing, if you see the note on the side, no one will get a decrease in pay. Okay? Somebody may not get a $5,000 raise, whereas the other person doing the same position get a $1,000 raise or $100. Okay, that's what I'm trying to eliminate, somebody getting a $3,000 raise as opposed to somebody getting a $200 raise. You did have things like that. Maybe the numbers are off, but you had something similar to that in our old schedule. And you're talking about equity. I think that's equity when you can tolerate somebody getting a $3,000 raise and I'm doing the same job or something similar and getting a $100 raise.
So how many people would this affect?
Let me interject if I may. As Ms. Joseph mentioned, statute says that school-based administrators have to be on performance pay. And I'm gonna try to explain it like we do the performance pay for teachers. Say, for example, I come in as a new administrator, new principal at Madison County Central School with 10 years' experience. You place me on that salary schedule, whatever it is for step 10. At the end of this current school year, if my evaluation is highly effective, I will get the raise that's based per highly effective. If, say, hypothetically speaking, my salary was $65,000 and my raise for being highly effective was $1,000. Now, my new base, I won't get a full step. My new base will be $66,000. That's the way the performance pay works. If I was effective, I would get 75% of that, or $750. So your school-based principals will never get a full step anymore per statute, because that's the way the performance pay works. Just like any new teachers we have that we hired after, I think it was 2011, were on performance pay, and they work the exact same way. Now, we have some that are grandfathered that don't apply to the performance pay. Now, looking at other administrators, such as district level administrators, supervisor of transportation, supervisor of maintenance, coordinators, and folks of that sort, they're not on performance pay. That's why you have to have the salary schedule with the steps as well. So people like if me and Ms. Hill or Mr. Killingsworth or folks like that, we're not tied to performance pay unless we become a principal at a school. And that's the way the performance pay works. And yes, we were written up by this in the audit we just finished, and we're also written up by this in the audit from 15, 16, the last time they did an operational audit.
And that was from not having a performance pay component to it, right?
You're absolutely correct. And this is just one phase of it. We have to go back and on the other side and in the negotiation process, redevelop and fix correctly the instructional and non-instructional performance pay plan as well. And that was also written up in this last audit.
I hope he got what you're talking about. What I have done, I've made the increments or the steps, if you want to use that language, the same each year rather than them being haphazard. That's what they were before. 1 year you get this amount of raise, next year you get this amount of raise, next year you get, and it was seesaw up and down. And for us to be able to put in a viable performance pay, that needed to be consistent. And yes, we did have a $5,000 raise in there for 1 year, and therefore your performance pay would have to be based on that. And so it made life a lot easier for our finances and to satisfy all the workers.
My only concern, my main concern is for the consistent, dedicated employees who had their eyes or has been observing the current pay scale over the course of 10, 15 years, understand that there is a significant jump, 2,000, 5,000, whatever, and they are dutiful, dedicated, doing what they're supposed to do, and they get right to that point, and then all of a sudden is no longer there. So that's not. I think that's not fair to them, and that's my point.
And so we need to put in a performance pay scale of $5,000.
No, I'm not saying that we need to add to adjust it. We all know if you look at the pay scale, that jump is down the road a little bit. It's not after 2 years. It's not after 5 years. I'm not sure exactly, but it's down the road a little piece. And folks who had their eyes on that jump, if they've been dutiful and dedicated and working their way to that point, I don't think it's fair to move the goalposts when they get right on the 1 yard line.
So our audit we'll get fined on this again in our audit, because this is the second or third year we've been fined on this.
You just said that we were, you were hit on the performance pay component part of it. And that's why I asked earlier, is it possible to integrate the performance pay scale with the current existing pay schedule?
So, can I, and if I heard, this may have changed, so I don't want to, correct me, Sam, if I misspeak. But part of the challenge with having a large increment in your salary schedule like that is what Shirley said in the beginning. The statute actually is more or less what has done away with that. Performance pay says that basically if you have a highly effective rating, then you have to receive at least $1 more than your greatest increment on your grandfather's salary schedule. If your greatest increment is $5,000, that means everybody that's highly effective would get a $5,000 performance pay added to their base salary, which is not sustainable from a financial standpoint. Now, this only impacts people that are impacted by performance pay, which would be your school-based administrators.
And you're effective between 75% of that.
See, one time, the same thing with the instructional, to help understand a little bit further. There, on the instructional salary schedule, if you look at it closely, there are a couple steps that have that large gap. So what the union, and this was, when that first came out, what the union and the board agreed to was $1 more than the average amount between each step. That's why highly effective is $851 for a teacher, and an effective teacher is 75% of that, or $637. Otherwise, we'd have been in the same situation at the time, but since it's union, we had to negotiate that.
And I went a step further. We've got the auditor here on site with us. She could not give me a full opinion, but I asked her to look over that, and she says, well, her unedited, opinion, that we're doing the right thing. But she couldn't give it to us in writing.
And as Mr. Barnes said, this is not sustainable, this $5,000 increase for everyone that's highly effective. We can't do that.
If Ms. Joseph didn't change the administrative salary schedule, the performance pay has to be $1 more than the highest step. So with that case, if I was highly effective and the highest step was $5,000,
You'd have to get
I would
$5,000
get
more.
$5,001.
And I get that part, sir. What I'm saying is, I think, and I understand that is a significant jump. I get that part. But what I'm saying is, I can also understand why, such a jump was implemented in the first place. So maybe not $5,000, but something, something a little more, maybe lower, but so that, it wouldn't be as an impactful on our budget as he alluded to earlier. So I'm done.
Ms. Joseph, the level one, who is under that level? I'm not seeing,
Okay, it's no one's under level 1. That should have been hidden. We got, that was right, that's gone. That was our chiefs. We got rid of that level.
because that was pushing your salary. I mean, the top end of that is pushing,
We got rid of, remember you said you didn't want
Right.
any more chiefs? We
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
have any more chiefs. We down to directors. And your directors and your principal of the high school and the central school are on the same level.
Okay, after hearing in regards to the administrative salary schedule, do we have a motion on the floor to approve?
As the superintendent's recommendation, I move to approve the administrative salary schedule.
second,
Properly moved by Ms. Gibson and seconded by Mr. Alford. Would there be a need for further discussion? All
And
in
let
favor?
me ask Mrs. Joseph, this was your recommendation, right, Ms. Joseph?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I have talked with the auditor, and I've talked with Mr. Barnes several times, and Ms. Goins, who is helping with payroll.
So we being penalized every time we'll let this go.
We're being penalized in that we say we don't have any money, and I'm trying to preserve the money we have and treat all our employees equitable. Okay, and so, penalize, that takes money out of your coffers, you have to hire another teacher.
And this will be effective July 1? Or the
July
new
1,
fiscal?
yes.
All right, will there be any need for any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 2-2. Mr. Attorney.
So the motion did not pass.
Nope.
You would either have to, someone would have to make another motion, or you'd have to bring it back up when you have a full board.
Okay, what is the pleasure?
I'd like to bring it back up when we have a full board
Okay.
present.
We'll bring it, revisit the item when we have a full board.
Okay, all of our employees will be getting their steps and increases, but our administrators for in the November check.
Okay, thank you. Item 5.5, monthly financial reports.
Thank you. So in your packet, you have the monthly financial statements. So the first piece is your revenues and expenditure report for the month ending October 31st. For general fund, basically you were neutral. The amount of revenue that you brought in was $6,262,000, and the amount of expenditures was $6,234,000. So basically, you're $27,000 positive year to date, which is more or less neutral. All other funds are kind of operating as scheduled. I will draw your attention as far as the general fund on the second page. You'll see two expenses, one in community service, one in debt service, in which there was no budget in the budget column for. I'll be bringing a budget amendment to you when the third calculation comes out, and we'll do all the budget amendments at that time. What those are, those expenses, especially the debt service, is basically those are IT equipment purchases that were actually a capital lease purchase that you're paying out of your digital allocation money. So I'll be bringing a budget amendment to you that will include a budget to plan for those capital lease payments as you go forward through the year. So far this year, you're operating according to plan. And like I said, revenue to expenditures, you're neutral. Your FTE, I think Ms. Hill actually reported in your one of your previous board meetings, is that your FTE is down a little bit, but there is money within the budget that I can reallocate toward that shortfall and actually pull out of the budget without impacting any staffing or impacting any programmatic decisions that you may have. So overall, the district is operating as it's healthy. Are there any questions about the revenue and expenditure reports?
Let me ask you a question that I had. When I see something like, for instance, year-to-date excess, quote, in parentheses, deficiency, what does that mean?
So if it's not in parentheses, it means it's a positive number. If it's in parentheses, it means it's a negative number. It means it's a deficiency. So for example, if you had implemented the steps July 1st, and let's say they're $240,000 and you're 1/4 of the way through the year, that would have been an additional $60,000 expended, and you would actually see a deficit of roughly $30,000 because you would have spent $60,000 more or $30,000 more than what you brought in so far year to date.
Thank you.
And what you see in those bottom, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, those are basically your bottom numbers. You'll have an audited fund balance soon. The auditors are here, so that number will change from your fund balance from unaudited to audited. And then you'll have basically the amount of revenue coming in versus the expenditures going out. That'll generate the second number. And then the current estimate is kind of where we're projecting the fund balance to end up at the end of the year. So hopefully that helps explain all of that. If there's no further need, like I said, it appears as if you guys are operating according to plan. There's You'll probably see a bump in November because you'll receive a large portion of your ad valorem receipts. They usually come in November and December, and then you'll spend those down through the end of the year through June. So, and if there are no questions, I will move on to the next piece of the packet. So the next is your monthly warrant register. This is every check paid by the district for the month of October in alphabetical order. I'm sorry, actually in check number order.
Check order.
Yeah, sorry about that. It started with the letter A. So. But some of those are actually not actually expenditures by the district. Some of those checks are withholding checks for employee benefits, and they're being paid out to insurance carriers. So that way you can see everything that was spent during the current month, which I think you guys see a weekly report still on purchase orders and things as well, correct? And if there are no questions on the warrant register, then the next one is a report that we added last year, the year-to-date vendor report. And basically that is a vendor report in alphabetical order with all of the expenditures by fund for each vendor that the district has, and that's year-to-date from July 1st until now. And the reason for showing you this is that as you get these reports, if there's something that you want to look at, if you want to look at supporting documentation, or if you want to look at what drove the purchase or what drove the expense, we have all of those records back in the accounts payable department and in the finance department, and you can go and pull those and look at those at any time. So if there are no questions on that, I just need a motion for approval of the monthly financial statements.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the monthly financial
I make the
reports?
motion to approve the monthly financial report.
Second.
Properly moved by Ms. Bell, seconded by Ms. Gibson. Would be a need for discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carried. 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Item 5.6, permission to advertise policy updates.
Mr. Chairman, I am
Mr.
excited to say we are caught up with all of our policies through April of 2020. You've got 31 policies, actually 30 policies, and one is technically a policy for definitions that we're having to update. We've worked with the board. We sat around here at the table and went through each of these and made the necessary changes. Even though you look at them and you see it'll have the policy number, it'll have my initials and a date, because I did all the keystrokes, but like I said, we sat it as a committee and reviewed them. But we need to request permission to advertise those so we can get those done. But like I said, the next round, 20.2, should be on track for sometime in April.
Okay. Do we have a motion for permission to advertise the policy updates?
I made the motion to advertise the policy updates.
Second.
It's been properly moved to second. Would there be a need for further discussion? All in favor? Oppose? 4-0. 5.7, presentation, employee U. Mr. Stolnick.
Mr. Chairman and board members, I have with us Stephen Warren from Employee U. And he's going to actually open up the presentation, but I want to give you a little background. For the last couple of years, we've worked with the Easter Seals Foundation, which is another vendor. They do the same thing. And what we do, we work through vocational rehab and place students who have IEPs in the workforce. In that case, Easter Seals paid them, and we even used them in our school system where they would place them, they'd pay them to get OJT on job training, and then hopefully they'll be able to find a job elsewhere. We have a couple of success stories of students that have gone through that. Mr. Warren and Employee U is just another vendor that's reached out to Ms. Agner, who deals mostly with vocational rehab. And we will have a contract at the first December meeting for your approval. But I asked Mr. Warren to come and give you a good understanding so he can answer any questions that you may have. And then we can get this process through so we can start working with our vocational rehab folks. Mr. Warren?
All right. Hi. I want to thank all of you for having me here today. There's a lot more people here today at 6 p.m. than 6 a.m. That's a misunderstanding on my part. So I work with EmployU. We are a nonprofit organization. We provide services for the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. We assist people with disabilities with employment services. What I wanted to talk to you guys about today is our OJT program, on-the-job training. Essentially what that is, we look for businesses and organizations to partner up with where our clients can volunteer for a period, usually 6 to 8 weeks, where they can gain some much needed job experience. The main difference between a traditional volunteer and our clients through the program, as Mr. Stallmaker explained, is we pay our clients while they're participating. We do cover the wages, workman's comp, and liability insurance, so all employee costs are covered. I do compare it to a paid internship, essentially, where all the costs are covered by us. We do partner with a lot of different businesses with a lot of great success stories. We love to see those. We work with a lot of retail like TJ Maxx and big organizations. We've been working with the building industries a lot. A lot of our students have been able to gain tons of experience doing so many things like welding, pipe fitting. They've gained OSHA 10 certifications. All things through this program that really helps prepare them for the future. Experience they probably wouldn't otherwise gain. The businesses we partner with also see a reduction in labor costs because obviously they're getting some volunteer labor as well. But really that's just kind of a side, added bonus, I guess. Really being able to contribute to the community is a huge benefit. Trying to think, did you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to know about it? I know, like Mr. Stallmaker said, we would have that contract available for you at the next meeting for you guys to approve. In our program, our clients normally, we try to limit it to about 15 hours a week. We're flexible on the schedule, how we set it up for each individual. And this would be the process that we would kind of collaborate with you to see how you would like to proceed with it. But we typically try to set up an interview where somebody could, if you guys wanted to designate an individual to meet with them to see if you think they would be a good fit, try to determine a schedule at that point and move forward from there. We do provide training for our clients. We follow up to ensure they are successful. If for whatever reason we do encounter an issue where you feel like it's not a good fit, then we would end their program at that point, but that rarely happens. Usually, and our goal is really to provide the training and help them overcome these barriers. That's our goal. We want them to learn and improve.
Some of the places we use
them at in the past was either cafeteria workers, custodial workers, or clerical type folks, just to give them the skills they can need to make them employable.
And that I didn't mention, my client, that what led me to you in the first place, it's a young lady, her dream is to work in a library. I believe she has volunteered with the school board in the past in the library for a period. She did work with a small bookstore that ended up closing after that. But really, that's kind of been her passion. We've been looking, we do provide employment services. We've been looking at other things. It's hard to get on with the library sometimes, but that is really her dream there. And, really just if she could even get that experience, it'd be fantastic. I think she'd be one of your success stories.
One last thing, any folks that they work or they place in our school system, obviously will have to go through the fingerprinting and drug screening, just like regular employees.
And that's something I believe we talked about a little bit. We can help accommodate that. We do have, for some of our organizations we partner with that do want the background check, we can run that. If you guys want us to, we can help out with that. Our goal with it is to cover all the costs. It should be something that is, free to the organizations we partner with. That's the goal of the program.
Sounds good. Let me ask you something. I am familiar with OJT, but who's been doing it up until now? Or how has it been operating? Who's placing the students right now, or haven't they been?
Well, I don't want to confuse, please, it's separate from our traditional OJT that we have at the high school. It's not the same thing.
Okay, this is something different.
This is something totally different. The OJT at the high school is working through the high school with our high school students.
Okay, that's still going on, like it
Yes,
didn't-
that is, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
That's still going on. This process will reach out to students who have special needs that may not necessarily be a part of the OJT program, or it may be an adult that is working through vocational rehab to help get them employable. So it's not only going to help our students, but it's also going to help our community stakeholders as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sounds very good.
Yeah.
We work with youth and adults for our youth program. The qualifying factors there would be between the ages of 14 and 22 and enrolled in a school of some point, either high school or college. I work with the adult services myself. We do the OJTs as well. Typically a little different than the youth. Our youth program's great. They do a lot of summer camp, career camp, things like that. When the students are out of school, that's when they really dive into some of the more in-depth programs. But the program works the same for, both the youth and the adults. And there would be clients who do go through vocational rehabilitation, like Mr. Stallmaker said. Anybody who had an IEP or a disability of some sort could, go to them and receive services.
That's very good.
And that is a direction that vocational rehabilitation has been wanting to take more and more. It seems like they've been getting away from the adult services more and really trying to reach out to the youth and kind of help prepare them for the workforce.
All right, any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have the contract on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, superintendent items.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I've got a couple of items. One thing is, I just want to announce that the Central School 7th and 8th grade class is having a online cake auction coming up on November 26th. That's all I can tell you right now, but if you see anything about it, they have requested that they host this cake auction.
What is the money going toward?
It's gonna be for a 7th and 8th grade trip. It has not been approved yet, so that's why I didn't mention it. They hadn't brought it to me yet, but that will be here. Ms. Dixon is aware of it. She will have that will be on your agenda next week, 7th and 8th grade trip for approval during spring break. Okay, Ms. Hill put some information at your desk, and she's gonna briefly review that.
Mr. Alford had requested some information on comparing data from our progress monitoring assessments along with the Florida Standards Assessment and our students' grades. That was a little difficult to pull that information in terms of students' grades without going one by one. And so, but I did find a report where I could pull out passaging percentages for grade levels. And so what you have in front of you is the first 9 weeks passing percentages for each of those courses. Their progress monitoring data. So if a student was a tier 1 or tier 2, that means that they did not have large deficiencies. And then also the last column is their FSA, their 2 and above scores. And so there are some places that we need to look and try to figure out why there are big discrepancies. And that's something that we'll be talking with the principals about when we have our next principals meeting. We did not expect those percentages to align completely because that takes out, in student grades, it takes out all effort. If all you grade is the standard and there's nothing for, growth or progress, then you take out a lot of the incentive to try. And so I gave you Greenville's, Pinetta's, Lee's, and then the Central Schools, 1st grade to 8. There is not a kindergarten in there because remember we switched over to the standards-based report card, and so they don't get passing grades. Theirs is all based on mastery. And then I did not do the high school because theirs is way different when you're trying to pull that information. And so, but I hope this will give you the information that you were wondering about, and it gave me a little direction to go in terms of some areas where we need to look at why we're having really high passing rates at one grade level, and then the next grade level, the students really struggle. And so we will be looking at that and trying to determine some ways that we can make that transition easier for students and get them more prepared as they go from grade level to grade level.
What is the percentage that you feel is the target percent in this tier 1 and 2 where it should be at?
Well, you want 100%, of course. I think realistically,
But at what percent should we be alarmed as board members?
I think when you get below 50%, then we need to be looking at what are we doing, because that's a big issue. You really don't want more than 30%. We don't want anybody, scoring level 1s. But we also have to look at, where the students are, when they come in. And you can get lots of different kinds of data when you're looking at that. iReady is not a great predictor in kindergarten of how the student's going to do the next year. We have known that for several years now. And so that was another reason that we needed to look at, are the students mastering the standards, and move into that standards-based report card. And so I think we will see a difference going forward with that group of students, that they will be more prepared for first grade. And then, of course, we're moving that standards-based report card to first grade. And then, the students should be better prepared going to second grade. Where I see a big gap, we used to see a big gap at third grade. Our students would get to third grade and we'd have this huge amount that were scoring a level 1 and being retained in third grade. Well, we addressed that, and boy, we pushed back in the second grade and we said, you got to get the rigor up. You got to prepare them better. And so second grade has stepped up to the plate, and they've done that. But now we're seeing that going from first grade to second grade is a huge jump. And now part of that is that the standards, there's a big jump in the standards. In second grade, students are required to read independently. Yet in first grade, when they leave first grade, they are not required to read independently. And so because of that, they leave first grade and they haven't had to read independently. They get into second grade and the standards require them to read independently. And so we're having to work with first grade to say, we know the standards haven't, said we have to do this, but for the students to be successful, they have to be able to leave first grade reading independently. And so, and that means that there is a lot that has to happen in first grade. First grade is probably the most important grade level for a student learning to read of any grade level. And so, but it's one that we're having to push the students through really fast to get them to be independent readers. And so we're doing that. We're working in that direction. Like I said, the standards-based report card is going to help get us to that point. But I do think if we're below 50%, that's a concern. If we're below 30%, that's a major concern. Robin, I want to thank you for gathering this information, but just to clarify something.
Yes, ma'am.
For instance, under the first page, first quarter classes. Now, are you talking about all the classes? I mean, what does it mean?
So
You know?
the first column is language arts, grade 1. Okay, so for that school, that's all the first grade language arts students. And as you can see there, the percentage that passed, they got a passing grade.
They passed
Yes,
By what test was given? I mean, how did you mean?
that's their grades. They
That's
had a
just-
passing grade.
That's just a passing grade?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so what Mr. Alford had asked for was a comparison of grades versus progress
So
monitoring.
this is a
and-
teacher thing right here. This is the teacher gave them grades,
Yes,
they passed.
yes.
Okay,
Those
thank you.
are the grades that they earned.
Right.
Then compared to in grades K to 5, iReady, grades 6 to 8 is Exact Path.
How,
Thank you.
have you looked at the data of how, like with already level ones, like the percent level ones per, does that go with the tier 1 and 2, or is that?
Yeah, that is, iReady is divided up into tiers. And so when you get your iReady, the teacher gets their iReady report, it tells them which students are in, tier 3, your lowest group, tier 2, your medium group, and then your tier 1, of course, are your regular students who are not struggling. And so that kind of aligns with the FSA. I would say overall it aligns, but there are grade levels where it's not exact. And they don't claim that it's exact, but, and as they get more research and they have more students in their research bank, then it should balance out to be pretty close. But I will say that, I looked at this and I was a little surprised that some schools had a really high percent of students who scored a 2 or above on the FSA, and yet their iReady scores were extremely low. There could be a number of reasons for that. If you have a new teacher in a classroom and the students are assigned to take iReady, they may not realize I need to really be monitoring them and pushing them through, and so the students may not try. It could be a case like that. And at schools where there's one teacher teaching, let's say, 3rd grade language arts, then you could have that situation and it makes the whole grade level look lower than it really is. And so that's why we kind of want to look at things as a district so that to really be able to tell, is iReady lining up with the FSA, you really have to look at it as a district to get, valid numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Michelle. Okay, I've got one other thing, just a reminder, on this Thursday, we're having, all schools are having Thanksgiving meals and stuff. If you'd like to go out and volunteer, I'm sure they would love to have you help serve.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right, attorney items.
None unless you have questions of me, Mr. Chair.
Board member items, Ms. Gibson.
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending the storytelling event this past weekend, and I'd like to thank Ms. Wanda Violet. She's one of our volunteers who spent many hours in the classroom preparing students to be able to tell a story, which is basically a lifetime skill. I enjoyed hearing the stories from the young and the older ones. I'd like to thank Ms. Joseph for placing emphasis on teaching creative writing in the classrooms in our 3rd grades. That was brought up at the end of the last meeting. I discovered when I was teaching at the high school, the last 8 years of my teaching career, that the students, many of them, could not write in cursive or read in cursive, which means they graduate from high school without being able to write their name in cursive. I could go on about the benefits of writing in cursive, but I've done a lot of research on it, and there are many benefits, such as writing a check, signing a credit slip, marriage certificate, signing an apartment lease. It's good not only for your signature, but for special needs such as dysgraphia and dyslexia. So I could go on, but it's only going to be as good as the classroom teacher and if the principals expect it and demand it to be done. Thank you. Oh, and I'd also like to congratulate the Madison County Cowboys and their coaches for going into the state final, and I look forward to another state championship. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Bell.
Yes, I would like to congratulate the Madison County Cowboys for going to the next level.
All right, thank you. Mr. Alford.
I'd like to congratulate all the students this first 9 weeks who who did their best and continue to do their best. Also, the football team, the band, all the students involved in extracurricular, congratulations to them and wishing them well in the playoffs. And again, I would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
All right, and I also would like to congratulate the Cowboys for another outstanding season. This season, I'm sure didn't catch anybody by surprise. We expected them to go this far, and we're expecting them to bring it home again. And also wanted to thank Ms. Dixon for sharing in that presentation. Very informative, very important information, I believe. I know we saw the end where it talked about the disciplinary issues or what have you, but I caught the successes, and I'm appreciative of all of the hard work that is put forth by you and your staff, and as well as all of the schools and the positive things that, as we said in the last meeting, go unnoticed. So I applaud you all and all of the district members and staff and the superintendent, just everybody in the district doing a wonderful, wonderful job. That's all I have. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned.